So, Ashley, welcome. We're so excited to have you share your perspective as on your teaching career. What inspired you to become a teacher?
First off, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. For me, it was senior year of college, and it was where am I going to go from here? And as college students, you always need money. And someone gave me the opportunity to be a learning assistant at Sac State. That was my alma mater. That's where I went to college. And being a learning assistant, you got to work in the classroom with professors who I think one of the professors that I worked with was a high school or he was a college like introductory biology professor. So I was dealing with a lot of students that were like 18, 19, essentially just freshmen starting out in college. And so there was me and another girl that we worked with, and he just kind of had us do like warm ups. We'd hold study sessions together. We'd do study guides, anything that would prep kids for the coming lesson or for the big test that they had. And I loved it. You know, initially it started off as I just need to make money. And then it became, oh my gosh, I like working with young people. I like it when I'm giving them a little bit of knowledge or we're talking through something and they're working through it in their minds, and they get it. Like you see the light go on. And I loved that feeling every day. And we had to attend little sessions about, we learned research on what are some good strategies in the classroom, collaborative strategies. What are some things that we could start implementing? And that's where I really got my love of teaching from. And then when I went to the person who spearheaded this program and I was like, hey, teaching might be a pathway that I'm interested in, they suggested that I actually go work with middle school and high school kids because I was dealing with college kids. And they were like, sometimes it's a completely different ballpark. So go from college to high school to middle school. And so I found this after school program that I worked with for a good 6, 7 months. And it was dealing with some kids in a really rough neighborhood. A lot of them, the neighborhood that they grew up in was riddled with gang violence, parents that were on drugs. I think where we were, there had been a shooting like right across the street because there was a park right across the street. And I loved it. I loved that all of us that were working with these young kids had the common goal of getting kids to see like that they had opportunities. Um, Getting them, like each of us had our own little things that we were focusing on. Like my I was a STEM major, and so I worked with other people that were working with these young people about doing STEM activities. What are some things that we could get them interested in? And so that's really where my interest came into was, you know, creating these paradigm shifts for kids. A lot of these kids that grew up in these neighborhoods never knew what they could accomplish, never knew what they could be. So when they see somebody like a Latina in a STEM field, and they see that representation, it gives them an opportunity to think like they could do it too. And so that's really where my interest in becoming teaching came from, was those two experiences. And that's how I became a teacher.
Okay, that's great. So you went to Sac State, um,
Hmm.
and in your teacher training program, how did they prepare you to engage with families and parents?
Well, my teaching credential program was very much rooted in social justice. And the very first day, I remember one of our first classes that we took, it was a bunch of us in this big old auditorium, and we had like 4 or 5 professors in the front, and they were talking to us about the 3 R's. Here's the 3 R's of education: rigor, relevance, relationship. And they really emphasized that third R, that relationship building. And they said, hey, you can't get rigor, you can't get relevance, you can't teach these kids if you haven't built a relationship with them first. And so that was kind of threaded into every class we took, into that class that we were taking about, well, what does relationship look like? How do we go about building relationship with our students? How do we go about building relationship with our families? And so that really, I mean, man, it's been 8 years since I finished that program, and that has stuck with me. Like, I still remember that first day. I still remember those 3 R's, and I still remember how important it was for them to talk to us about how relationship building is the fundamental piece, the foundational piece before you can do anything, right? Because kids don't want to learn from you if you haven't taken the time to get to know them on a personal level.
Okay. Thank you. That's exceptional. I think um there are programs that are coming along across the country, but just that idea that, building those relationships was threaded through your whole program, not a standalone class. I think it sounds to me like that has influenced how you teach and how you interact with students.
You're absolutely right. I don't, the first, I would say the first 3 days of school, I don't even touch content. I don't even like, we'll do a little content stuff where they're like building with each other, but like it's more about how do they collaborate with each other? How do they talk to each other? If they come up with a scenario and someone disagrees, how do they handle those situations? And then I'll ask them questions about their lives, and I'll ask them, share about who are the important people in your life, who inspires you to be here. And so that's really what I focus on the first 3 to 5 days of school, is relationship building with my kids, them getting to know me on a personal level. And I tell them, like, I'm about to get really vulnerable with you. You're about to learn a lot about my life, probably more so than any other teacher you've ever met. I said, but I think it's important that you understand, when we're having hard days and I'm on you for, hey, you didn't get this done. I want you to know that it's coming from a place of love. And if you know me, you already know, oh yeah, she loves me. That's why she's on my butt, is because, she's coming from a place of love, and they remember the things that I talked about when I talk about myself. And then I give them opportunities to share about themselves, not just with me, but with the whole class.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. It sounds like a class anyone would want to be part of. So that's exciting to hear. You've gone through parent teacher home visits training, is that correct?
Yeah, uh, we had a few folks from parent teacher home visit come on one of the days for one of our classes. I think it might have been our foundations class. And they came, they spoke about it. First, they gave us how they got started. Then they talked a little bit about what their model looks like. And I think they even had a parent who came and talked. I think her name was Yesenia, and she came and talked about, what parent teacher home visits did for her as a parent. So we had an educator there, we had someone who was part of PT, the parent teacher home visit model, and then we had a parent there. And then they even gave us like kind of a script that we just kind of followed with each other. And so we got a little bit of practice. And then many of us went out on teacher home visits with other educators that were already doing this. So I know I went with a couple other of my peers at the time who were going through their program. And we just really got to see it in action. Like, we followed along, watched as they did their thing, watched as they asked questions. And we were just sort of like taking notes.
Okay. Any aha moments or key takeaways you can remember from that, either those visits or the training? And yes, her name is Yesenia. And yes, she is still working with Parent Teacher Home Visit. I'll have to tell her that you
Yeah.
remember her after 8 years. She'll be thrilled.
Yeah, no, I loved it. I think one of the most profound things that came up during that was, I had never seen something like this. They're always talking about how do we bridge gaps between home and school, because it's so important. I mean, anybody who's ever been through WASC, right, that accreditation at school, one of the things they talk about is What are you doing to bridge the gap between home and school? What are you doing to community build? And watching two teachers not just talk to parents, at sporting events or at events that they come to at school, but in their home, and ask them, what are your hopes and dreams for your child? I mean, that was oh my goodness, you're asking this parent, where do you see your kid in the next 4 years, and how did I help them get there? Because these two teachers were freshman teachers. So they were getting the kids as soon as they weren't even in high school yet. They were eighth graders about to come into high school. And to me, that was just so profound, and an aha moment of, we can build these relationships before they get to us. And that was groundbreaking for me as a teacher, as a future teacher, watching teachers doing this right now and building those connections before they even stepped into their classroom.
Sometimes we hear, well, high school students don't really need visits. They don't really need to be worried about those relationships. That's really just for younger kids. That's where so as a high school teacher, what's your response to that?
Well, to me, it's these next 4 years. I tell my kids, like, wherever you go in life, whether you decide to pursue higher education, or whether decide to just start working as soon as you graduate, um, it's important for these next 4 years. Like, these next 4 years are super fundamental of where you're going in life. And why wouldn't you want to engage with families to talk about where they see their kids in the next 4 years? Where do they hope they go? Where do they hope that they get foundational skills that might help them in whatever their endeavors are, right? We never know what kids are wanting to pursue or what they don't want to pursue. And to me, relationship building and having those conversations with families so that we can help those kids in the next 4 years get to wherever they need to go is so important. Like, I think it's important in every aspect of every year, whether we're talking about elementary, whether we're talking about middle school, whether we're talking about high school. But I think so even it's even more important in high school, because these next 4 years are going to tell them where they're about to go, whether they're going to pursue higher education, whether they're going to pursue a career, whether they're going to go to trade school. And we need to have those conversations before they even enter high school so that we can help them figure out what their pathways are, to figure out, be more intentional about the classes they take.
Okay. Um, so many teachers and educators in general are apprehensive about making a visit to a family's home. What would you say to them? And were you apprehensive the first time you went?
Yeah, I mean, like I said prior, I had never seen a model like this. I had never seen this. I mean, my parents were very big on education, but they really, we never really had a connection in high school between, I don't even think they even remember any of my high school teachers' names, to be honest with you, or can remember exactly the classes that I took. And I think for me, it was, I had never seen this, so I was a little nervous about it, even though we were with, teachers that knew what they were doing. This wasn't the first time doing it. I think they had been doing it for the last couple of years. I was just nervous because I was like, oh, we're going into students' homes, and we're asking them questions like, what's this going to look like? But they set the tone really quickly when they basically ask them, like, how can I help your student be successful? That's what I'm here for. I'm helping you. You're at home, guiding your student, guiding them to be the best versions of themselves. I'm at school guiding them to be the best versions of themselves at school. How can we make this connection and do this together and build the best possible human being that we can build? And so once they set that tone and they ask those questions of how I can help you, then I wasn't so nervous. And I was like, wait, why aren't we doing this? Why isn't this a thing in every school? Whether we're talking about elementary, middle school, high school, why isn't this something that we're already doing? Because if we want to community build, this is the best way to do it. And one of the things they said to us was it doesn't even have to be in their home. It could be somewhere where you choose to convene together. Sometimes they said they met people at coffee shops, somewhere that made them feel more comfortable. It's all about what's best for the child. And that's what they centered on.
Okay. So building that relationship, as you talked about, not only with your students, but with their families as well.
Mm.
So what message would you give to other pre-service teachers, teachers in training, about the importance of family engagement? How has it really impacted your ability to do the thing that you want to do, which is teach and work with students?
To me, I hope the message that they're getting in their pre-service programs is that you can know all the content, you can do well and know everything about your subject matter, but kids won't want to learn from you if you don't see their humanity first. And to see that humanity, you have to relationship build. You have to ask those questions. You have to be a little bit vulnerable, about yourself, about who you are, and making those connections. Like, I feel like for me, a lot of my young boys, coming in from middle school to high school, they are still learning how to act and be mature in classrooms and testing the boundaries and see what they can get away with. But as soon as I let them know that I'm an avid basketball fan and I know basketball players and they're asking me questions like, whoa, you've been to basketball games, you know all about this, and that connection has been made, I get them to settle down a little bit. And, it's that connection building that we make. It's like, wait, her and I are the same basketball player in common, or, oh, we have the same basketball team in common. And so when you build that relationship, they're less likely to sort of act up for you because you really see their humanity and you've taken the time to get to know them and you've given yourself a little bit too. That's what I would say. I would say that key relationship building is so important for classroom management.
Okay. Thank you. You said that so beautifully. So what are your hopes for the future of family school partnerships in education?
Um, I a lot of times every year we have an LCAP meeting. And every year I go to that LCAP meeting and they ask for inputs from teachers like, what do you want to see? And I tell them all the time, like, we need to foster a relationship with our community much better than what we're doing. And I think we need to have conversations before kids ever get here, especially with our freshmen. I think it's important that we build that foundation with our freshmen, but building relationship with families and getting them to understand that we're not so scary. Teachers are not scary. Administrators are not scary. Those of us who are educating your kids are not scary. And we they get a glimpse into our world a little bit and we get to glimpse into their world a little bit and we just create those connections with each other. And I want to see more and more schools being able to do that, having those connections in the community and having those conversations with parents and those who are at home with the students all day every day, because I think that's important for helping our young people strive to be the best versions of themselves.
Okay. Well, so I want to thank you for sharing your insights this afternoon. Want to give you just a few minutes. Are you on Instagram? We can follow you, Facebook, anything like that, or tell us where we can find you if you want to. If
Yeah,
you don't want to, you
yeah,
don't have to
absolutely.
either.
So I have Instagram. Instagram has become my new favorite thing to connect with former students, to connect with family, to connect with influencers. And so my Instagram, if you want to follow me, is AEBabe07. So AEBABE07.
Okay, sounds good. So thank you so much for talking to us. Want you to have a really relaxing summer before you're back in the classroom in the fall. And we look forward to connecting, we hope, and Instagram or other places. Thanks so much, and you have a nice afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.